the Brits got the bottom. So what you had was the mandate of Palestine and Mesopotamia. Britain would have this, France would have this. Nobody wanted this. It was not worth having. There was nothing in Saudi Arabia that anybody thought was at all interesting and getting your grubby fingers on. So nobody wanted Saudi Arabia. It became independent and separate. The other bits were clung on to grimly for various reasons. So Britain had Palestine. There were international conferences of San Remo, London, Paris and so forth to allocate that sort of territory. Then at the end of the Second World War, the pressure was on, obviously. Those Jews who had been massacred in Europe in the Holocaust were left with some survivors, many of whom, but not all of whom, would like to go to Palestine. Already the consensus was starting to develop, though not without a huge amount of opposition from intellectual Jews who said, we are the citizens of the countries that we were born in, we are the citizens of the countries which have overthrown Hitler. The threat of the Holocaust has gone. It was the most dreadful event in history. It was the industrialisation of murder, but it is now finished. Others said no, anti-Semitism was always with us, everybody will always pick on Jews and we will have to go to Palestine. That was the driving impetus. So how to resolve this issue? As you'll see, the green and white ratio, not much land had been bought. The population of Jews in Palestine was only about a third. So it went to a vote of the General Assembly, the famous Resolution 181 of 1947, to carve Palestine in half. The wisdom of Solomon to divide it. And that gave some 56% of the territory to 1/3 of the population. There was to be a Jewish state, with a Jewish majority of less than 100,000, and an Arab state. Divided between them. No, not surprisingly, the Arabs of Palestine protested. They said, why are we giving half our country away to somebody who's only bought about 6% of it and constitutes 1/3 of the population, and all of them, almost all of them, have migrated from somewhere else. This is not a fair deal. They opposed the outcome of that resolution, which was, if you look at it in law, only a recommendation of the General Assembly. Only the Security Council can make determinations, and only then, under Chapter 7, can it be absolutely binding. But it was a recommendation of a small minority of the world's population in the General Assembly. And for instance, you had the Philippines, whose delegates spoke against partition, and then got recalled because the United States put the hard word on Manila, and the next vote went with the majority to get that 2/3 for partition. Okay, remember those figures, 56% for 1/3 of the population. That's where it got to. It's not where it finished. Where it finished was here. Because what happened, the Israelis and the Free Israeli State in May 1948 went on the offensive. Plan Dallin, Ben-Gurion and the other of the Zionist leadership says we are not going to have 56%. No word. No way are we going to have that. We will go and advance. And so they took over something like 78% of the territory of Palestine. And that's where you get the Gaza and the West Bank. It is a demarcation that was a ceasefire line. It was not an allocation of the United Nations, it was a ceasefire line which, after the recommendation for 56%, finished up with 78%. And that's where it was up until 1967. 1967, there was another war, yet another one, the Six-Day War, and the Israelis took over the West Bank, East Jerusalem, the Gaza Strip, and the Golan Heights. The Golan is the area up here, part of Syria, technically occupied part of Syria. And so 100% of historical Palestine was overtaken by Israel. How to achieve a peace? The United Nations, again, this time the General Assembly said in 1967, at the end of that Six-Day War, it is inadmissible to acquire territory by force, and it instructed Israel to withdraw. Now, in the aftermath of the next war, 1973, the Security Council passed another resolution, overlooked, which was Resolution 338. And that said that there will be an outcome, 242 will be achieved through negotiations. It's sort of like if you're caught in a convenience store, let's say Harvey Norman stealing TV, and the police arrive and they say, well, can we discuss this matter? And you say, yeah, we'll discuss it. Well, hang on to the TV in the meantime. It's okay, hang on to the TV in the meantime, but we'll discuss it. And you say, oh no, well, we've got really nobody to discuss it with. So hang on for another year and then we might think about it. So ever since 1967, Israel's been discussing it because they say Resolution 338 allows them to discuss it, irrespective of the fact that Resolution 242 told them to get out. And that's the situation that has continued. What we are talking about now is Gaza and the West Bank as territory that is occupied. On July 2004, the International Court of Justice issued an advisory opinion in which it decreed that unambiguously Gaza Strip, East Jerusalem, the Golan Heights and the West Bank are subject to belligerent occupation. In other words, Israel does not have a claim to them and must withdraw. The opinion was issued regarding the separation barrier and the settlements, both of which the court was absolutely clear on that they are illegal under international customary law. Doesn't help very much that the international bodies, the United Nations, both General Assembly and Security Council, International Court of Justice, say that these things are wrong, the situation must be reversed, and the occupation ended. But how to do it? Israel then says, well, we don't really want to have an imposed settlement. It is all right, of course, for Israel to impose a settlement on the Palestinians, but not for the international community to impose a settlement on the Israelis.